The storm rolled in without warning, dragging a strange silence that wrapped around the neighborhood like a warning no one understood. People kept glancing at their windows, sensing something was off, yet no one dared to speak about the tension hanging in the air. Inside the old Harper residence, a faint light flickered, as if struggling to reveal a truth that had waited far too long to surface. Moments later, a scream tore through the quiet evening, sharp enough to make even the wind hesitate before moving again. Evan Blake arrived at the Harper residence just minutes after the scream shattered the uneasy quiet. He paused at the front gate, noticing the way it swayed as if someone had rushed through moments earlier. His instincts tightened, warning him that the peaceful suburb no longer felt safe or predictable tonight. The porch light flickered in a nervous rhythm, casting broken shadows that crawled across the wooden steps. Evan climbed slowly, every creak under his shoes sounding louder than it should in the thick silence. He reached for the door but stopped when he noticed faint scratches near the handle, fresh and uneven. Someone had forced their way inside, and whatever happened had not been accidental or harmless at all. He pushed the door open and stepped into a dim hallway filled with the lingering scent of burnt candles. The air felt heavy, as if the house itself held its breath and waited for someone to break the tension. Family portraits lined the walls, but a few frames were tilted, suggesting a struggle or hurried movement. Evan called out softly, hopping for a response, even though he doubted anyone conscious would answer him. His voice faded quickly, swallowed by the oppressive quiet that pressed against his ears like thick fog. He noticed a trail of scattered items on the floor, leading deeper into the house like a desperate breadcrumb path. A fallen vase lay shattered near the dining room doorway, pieces glittering like sharp warnings on the floor. Evan stepped around them carefully, trying not to disturb what already felt like a fragile crime scene. In the dining room, a chair was overturned, its legs pointing upward as if frozen mid-struggle. The tablecloth was pulled halfway to the ground, revealing scratch marks carved into the polished wood surface. Evan bent down, tracing the marks with his eyes, imagining the fear that had driven someone to claw at the table. He moved toward the kitchen when he heard a faint tapping sound coming from upstairs. It was rhythmic, deliberate, as if someone wanted attention but feared raising their voice. Evan's pulse quickened as he followed the noise, each step up the staircase echoing in the hollow air. Halfway up, he noticed a smear of something dark on the railing, still tacky under his cautious touch. He wiped his hand quickly, unsettled by how fresh the mark felt against his fingertips. At the top of the stairs, the tapping stopped abruptly, plunging the house into a deeper silence. Evan held still, listening, wondering if whoever made the sound was now watching him from the shadows. A door at the far end of the hallway stood slightly open, a faint glimmer of light leaking from inside. He approached it slowly, hearing his own breathing grow louder with each step he took toward the room. He nudged the door and felt a cold draft brush against his face as the hinges groaned in protest. Inside, the small bedroom was a mess, with drawers emptied and clothes thrown across the floor. A single window stood open, curtains fluttering like frantic hands trying to point toward something unseen. Evan stepped closer and noticed a phone lying on the floor, its screen cracked but still glowing faintly. He picked it up and saw a half-typed message, abruptly cut off mid-sentence before it could be sent. The unfinished words formed a chilling warning that made Evan's stomach twist with dread. Someone had tried to escape, but they had not gotten far enough to finish their plea for help. Evan slipped the damaged phone into his pocket and scanned the room again, searching for anything recently disturbed. The chaotic mess suggested a frantic struggle, but the open window hinted that someone might have fled in desperation. A faint cold breeze drifted through the gap, carrying the metallic scent of fear that clung to the walls like residue. He leaned out carefully, noticing the soft indentation on the grass below where someone had landed moments earlier. The shape of the impression told him they had jumped rather than climbed down, driven by panic rather than caution. Evan backed away from the window, and turned his attention to the closet door standing rigidly ajar. A thin strip of darkness waited inside, silent and unmoving, as if hiding something unwilling to reveal itself. He pushed the door open and found a series of deep gouges carved across the inner wooden panel. The uneven lines suggested shaking hands, someone clawing at the surface in a final attempt to resist capture. A torn piece of fabric hung from the lower hinge, caught like a small, forgotten clue amid the chaos. Evan folded it carefully, noting the expensive texture that did not match anything else in the room. He stepped back into the hallway, aware of the unsettling stillness that pressed against his ears like muffled pressure. The house felt abandoned, yet not empty, as though the lingering presence of fear pulsed through every corner. He moved toward the master bedroom, drawn by the faint hum of something electronic still operating inside. The door pushed open with surprising ease, revealing a room that looked untouched compared to the chaos upstairs. A digital camera sat on the desk, its screen blinking with a notification that seemed to demand attention. Evan pressed the button, expecting a normal playback, but the footage showed only shaky darkness and muffled whispers. A single phrase repeated through the static, too distorted to understand, yet frightening enough to raise goosebumps. He rewound the clip and noticed a blurred figure at the edge of the frame leaning too close to the camera. The angle hid their face, but the strange posture suggested someone watching rather than participating in the scene. Evan paused the video and examined the shape, sensing an unnatural tension radiating from the shadowy outline. Someone had recorded this intentionally, but not for memory or documentation, more like a warning left behind. He turned off the camera and scanned the room again, noticing a locked drawer partially concealed under the desk. His pulse quickened as he forced it open, revealing a stack of letters bound tightly with a frayed string. The envelopes were addressed to different people, each written in the same sharp handwriting that carried urgency. Evan opened the top letter and skimmed the first lines, finding references to threats, surveillance, and a hidden secret. The writer seemed convinced that someone was stalking them, waiting for the right moment to strike without mercy. A chill crept down Evan's spine as he realized the warnings echoed the unfinished message on the cracked phone. He gathered the letters and slipped them into his jacket, understanding that the danger was far larger than the house. As he stepped into the hallway again, the floorboards creaked behind him with slow, deliberate pressure. Someone else was in the house, and they had been waiting for Evan to find exactly what he just uncovered. Evan froze as the creaking grew louder, each step deliberate and heavy, echoing through the empty halls. He pressed himself against the wall, listening as a shadow moved just beyond the corner of his vision. A faint hiss accompanied the footsteps, sharp enough to make him flinch and tighten his grip on the letters. The air thickened, carrying the scent of sweat and something metallic, like blood freshly spilled nearby. Evan's mind raced, trying to determine if he should confront the intruder or slip back down the stairs. A sudden thud above made him duck instinctively, realizing the second floor held secrets still undiscovered. He edged forward, keeping close to the wall, counting each step carefully to avoid giving away his location. The hallway stretched ahead, dim and silent, but the faint scrape of nails against wood followed him constantly. Evan's eyes landed on a slightly open bedroom door, light spilling from the crack in uneven patterns. He moved closer, heart pounding, and caught a glimpse of a figure crouched near the floor, shrouded in darkness. The figure didn't move, but seemed to be aware of him, its presence radiating an unsettling patience. Evan took a shallow breath, forcing himself to stay calm despite the fear curling in his stomach. He inched closer, noticing a small bag lying beside the figure, filled with papers and objects he couldn't identify. A metallic click sounded suddenly, sharp and precise, echoing through the hallway like a gunshot in the silence. The figure stiffened, then turned slowly, revealing a mask that obscured the face entirely. Evan froze, unsure whether to speak, run, or wait for the figure to make the next move. The masked intruder raised a finger to the lips, a silent warning that only increased the tension in the room. Evan understood then that any sudden movement could provoke a violent reaction, but he couldn't leave the letters. He took a careful step backward, eyes never leaving the shadowy figure, measuring the distance in his mind. The figure shifted slightly, producing a low, almost imperceptible hum that made the walls seem alive. Evan scanned the room again, noting an open window that might provide an escape if the intruder advanced. He crouched, moving slowly toward it, dragging one foot silently over the carpet to avoid any sound. A sudden whisper brushed his ear, chilling him to the bone, yet the figure did not move or speak directly. It seemed to communicate without words, relying on presence and threat to instill fear in whoever approached. Evan reached the window, peering down at the wet grass below, calculating the jump and the distance carefully. He could hear the soft creak of the floorboards behind him, measuring the intruder's patience like a predator. Taking a deep breath, Evan pushed the window open wider, feeling the cold night air rush past his face. The figure remained still, watching, as if assessing whether Evan had the courage to make his escape. Evan dropped down onto the grass, rolling as he landed to minimize the impact, keeping the letters safe. He glanced back once and saw the masked figure standing in the window, unmoving, watching him vanish into darkness. A shiver ran down his spine as he ran, realizing the danger was far from over, and the night held more secrets than he could imagine. Evan sprinted down the narrow streets, clutching the letters tightly against his chest. The rain had started again, drenching him instantly, but he barely noticed the cold water soaking through his clothes. Every shadow seemed to move with a purpose, making him glance over his shoulder constantly. His heart hammered as he rounded a corner, hopping for a glimpse of safety or another witness. Streetlights flickered overhead, casting brief moments of clarity before plunging him back into darkness. He paused behind a parked car, trying to catch his breath while listening for any sign of pursuit. The soft splash of footsteps echoed behind him, confirming that the masked figure had not given up. Evan darted across the street, narrowly avoiding a passing car, adrenaline sharpening his senses. He ducked into a narrow alley, the walls closing in, giving him the uneasy feeling of being trapped. A sudden noise made him spin around, and he caught sight of a shadow disappearing around the corner. Evan's chest burned as he ran, each step heavier, yet he could not afford to stop now. The letters felt heavier in his grip, burdened not just with paper, but with the danger they carried. He reached a small convenience store, its neon sign flickering weakly, offering a brief sanctuary. Inside, the clerk glanced up, startled, as Evan slammed the door behind him, gasping for air. He scanned the room for an exit route, any way to leave unnoticed, but the front door was exposed. The masked figure could appear at any moment, and Evan had no guarantee the clerk would understand. He ducked behind the counter, keeping the letters close, hoping the intruder wouldn't follow him inside. The store smelled of coffee and bleach, a strange contrast to the metallic tension clinging to his nerves. Evan's mind raced, thinking of where he could go next, somewhere safe to read the letters fully. He noticed a small back door, slightly ajar, leading to an alley he hadn't seen from the street. With a quick glance at the front, he bolted toward the exit, praying the masked figure hadn't tracked him here. The alley was narrow and slick with rain, forcing him to run carefully to avoid slipping and falling. He could hear his own breathing, harsh and uneven, mixing with the faint drip of water from above. Evan spotted a dumpster ahead, climbed over it, and landed quietly on the other side, moving further away. He paused briefly, peering around the corner, scanning for any sign of pursuit in the dim light. A distant siren blared, giving him hope that someone might be nearby, unaware of the danger lurking. He crouched low, moving from shadow to shadow, careful not to make a sound that could betray his location. The letters pressed against him, a reminder that the secret they carried was worth every risk. Evan knew the masked figure would not give up easily, and this chase was far from over tonight. He continued running, the rain and darkness blurring the streets, but determination kept him moving forward. Every step pushed him closer to the unknown, yet he refused to look back, refusing to let fear dictate his path. Evan ducked into an abandoned warehouse. The letters still clutched tightly in his hands. The large doors creaked behind him as he closed them slowly, listening for any sign of pursuit. Darkness swallowed the corners of the room, but he could make out crates and rusted machinery scattered around. His mind raced, trying to piece together who had sent the letters and why someone wanted them silenced. He moved cautiously, stepping over broken boards and tangled wires, aware that any noise could alert someone. The warehouse smelled of dust and decay, a stark contrast to the tension that still clung to his skin. Evan found a stack of crates and used them to elevate himself, giving a vantage point over the large space. He unfolded the letters one by one, scanning the handwriting for clues or hidden messages. Each letter told a story of fear, betrayal, and a secret someone wanted buried at all costs. He realized the danger was bigger than a single house or a masked figure chasing him tonight. A soft shuffle echoed from the far end of the warehouse, making him freeze mid-breath. Evan pressed against the crates, trying to control the tremor in his hands as he listened carefully. The sound stopped, replaced by a low whisper that carried through the empty space like a threat. He strained his eyes, searching for movement, but the darkness held its secrets tightly. Evan knew he couldn't stay here forever. Eventually, he would need a plan to leave safely. He tucked the letters securely inside his jacket, ensuring they wouldn't be lost or stolen. Footsteps approached again, slow and deliberate, echoing across the cold concrete floor. Evan scanned the room for anything that could be used for protection, a metal pipe or heavy object. A shadow moved just beyond his vision, disappearing behind a stack of crates, silent but menacing. He clenched his fists, forcing himself to remain calm and think through his next move. The masked figure appeared in the doorway, the dim light catching the edges of the mask. Evan held his ground, heart racing, and considered whether he should run or confront the intruder. The figure's presence was magnetic, almost controlling, freezing Evan in place with a silent authority. A soft click echoed as the intruder stepped closer, revealing a glint of metal in their hand. Evan ducked instinctively behind a crate, pressing his back against the cold surface to remain unseen. He realized the letters were the key, the reason for the pursuit, the proof of secrets someone wanted hidden. The intruder moved slowly, methodically, searching the warehouse for any sign of what had been taken. Evan's pulse thundered in his ears as he plotted an escape, weighing every possible route carefully. A small window high on the wall caught his eye, just wide enough for him to climb through. He adjusted his position, ready to make a break for it at the first sign of vulnerability. The figure paused, sensing something, and Evan held his breath, counting the seconds like a lifetime. Finally, the intruder stepped back slightly, giving Evan the opening he needed to move toward the window. He leapt onto a stack of crates, climbing higher with trembling arms, the letters still pressed to his chest. The rain outside glistened faintly through the dirty glass, promising freedom if he could just reach it. Evan's fingers gripped the ledge, pulling himself up, heart hammering, knowing every second counted. Evan swung himself through the window, landing hard on the wet ground outside. The rain soaked him instantly, but he ignored the cold, focusing on putting distance between himself and danger. He glanced back and saw the masked figure appear at the warehouse door, scanning the area with sharp, calculated movements. Evan sprinted across the empty lot, clutching the letters like a lifeline he could not afford to lose. Thunder rumbled overhead, masking the sound of his footsteps and giving him a fleeting sense of cover. He ducked behind a low wall, catching his breath, trying to calm the storm pounding in his chest. The figure paused at the warehouse entrance, seemingly sensing Evan's escape, but made no immediate move. Evan scanned the streets, looking for a place to hide or a path that would allow him to vanish. A fire escape on the building across the street caught his eye, offering a potential route to higher ground. He dashed across the wet asphalt, careful not to slip, the letters still pressed tightly against his chest. Reaching the building, he jumped to grab the lowest rung of the fire escape, climbing as fast as his soaked limbs allowed. The masked figure watched from below, unmoving, patient, waiting for Evan to make the next move. Evan climbed higher, reaching a balcony and pulling himself over the railing, gasping for air but refusing to stop. He ducked into an empty apartment, locking the door behind him and leaning against it, shivering from fear and rain. The room was dark and cramped, but offered a temporary sanctuary where he could think clearly. He spread the letters across the floor, reading each one carefully, piecing together the dangerous puzzle. The notes detailed betrayals, threats, and a conspiracy that involved more than just the masked figure. Evan realized he had stumbled into a web of lies far bigger than any single attack on a house. A sudden creak on the balcony made him freeze, heart hammering as he scanned the shadows outside the window. The masked figure was gone, but the sense of being hunted remained, a shadow following him even indoors. Evan gathered the letters quickly, stuffing them back into his jacket, knowing they held the key to the truth. He moved cautiously through the apartment, finding a staircase leading to the roof, a possible escape route. The city lights glimmered in the distance, offering a false sense of security against the danger still lurking. Evan climbed to the roof, crouching low, listening to the night, feeling the wind lash against his wet skin. He could see the streets below, empty except for occasional cars passing, none aware of the danger nearby. Evan planned his route carefully, knowing the masked figure could strike at any moment if he made a misstep. He descended the fire escape to the next building, moving silently, each landing calculated to avoid detection. The letters felt heavier with every step, a constant reminder of what was at stake if he failed. He paused briefly in an alley, realizing the chase was not over, and he needed allies to survive. Evan spotted a light in a nearby apartment window, a potential safe point to regroup and plan his next move. He dashed toward it, shadows blending with shadows, hoping the person inside would understand the urgency. Every heartbeat reminded him of the danger. Every step carried him further into the unknown, yet closer to survival. Evan slipped inside the building quietly, the door closing softly behind him, the letters still clutched as proof of the truth. He exhaled sharply, knowing this was only the beginning. The real fight for answers had just begun tonight. Evan sank onto a chair, exhausted, rain still dripping from his clothes and hair. The letters lay spread on the table, each one a fragment of a story he had barely survived. He ran his hands through his hair, trying to steady the racing thoughts and pounding heart. Outside, the city continued unaware, oblivious to the danger that had shadowed him all night. He realized the masked figure was still out there, patient, waiting for another chance to strike. Evan folded the letters carefully, knowing they held proof that could expose the conspiracy. He made a silent promise to himself. He would not let fear control him or the secrets remain hidden. Every step of the night replayed in his mind, each close call teaching him how fragile safety really was. He glanced at the window, the faint glow of dawn creeping through, offering a fragile hope. Evan knew the night had changed him, sharpened him, made him more aware of the world's hidden dangers. He tucked the letters securely into his bag, preparing to face whatever came next with resolve. The shadows of the masked figure would not vanish, but he would meet them on his own terms. For the first time, Evan allowed himself a small breath of relief, knowing he had survived the night. The storm had passed, but the secrets remained, waiting for the right moment to be revealed. Evan stepped away from the table, ready to move forward, carrying the truth and his resolve with him.